Hi, everybody. Today we're going to get right into it and discuss topics of unification around the world, globalism, and nationalism. So I'm going to go right through the slide, kind of read through them, explain a little bit, and move along. Go ahead and get out your pen and highlighter as normal. Nationalism, the growth of nationalism in the world in the 1900s. So, what is nationalism? This will be on your quiz. Go ahead and highlight. You will have to match this term. It's the growth or the growing sense of unity, purpose, and pride by people from a particular region or from a particular country. It's a strong or an intense devotion to one's nation. Many similarities in the group are language, customs, religion, um, status. It creates an identity, and sometimes it can be a great threat to the large well, this says multi-ethnic empires of the time. But this strong sense of nationalism led to revolutions, rebellions, and lots of change. And that's sometimes what we're going to be discussing a little bit today. Also, the definition of a nation state. A nation state is an independent state or country. Make sure you highlight and start that. That's on your quiz also. See if I can move this out of the way. Oh, don't want to do that. All right, when did it start? So it starts with the French Revolution, when the kings of the European countries sent armies to the end of the to end the revolution and to basically return a monarch to the French throne. Citizens of France united in a strong spirit of nationalism to defend their homeland, to defend their beliefs, and to put their monarch back on the throne. And years later, after Napoleon had risen to power, and threatened the security of Europe. Once again, these feelings of nationalism aroused Great Britain, Russia, Austria, Prussia, and Spain to defeat Napoleon to protect their territory and the rest of Europe. So that's kind of where we get this nationalism that begins to move up. We start with the French Revolution, and when Napoleon rises to power, other countries begin feeling this feeling and are like, okay, well, we got to protect our interests also. National identities become important, and so do desire for dominance and prestige. So that's kind of where this feeling of nationalism begins with the French Revolution. The good, it united citizens in efforts to have a voice in government, to gain human rights, to gain independence, and some sort of healthy patriotism, like saying the pledge or singing the national anthem. These are all positive sense of nationalism. The bad, created competition, control of trade, war, and persecution of other nations. So make sure you know that there's good and bad sides to nationalism. Again, a reminder, please pause the video is needed. I read pretty quickly, so if you need to stop, just go ahead and stop things so that you can hear it out or rewind as needed. Nationalistic, I cannot talk, factors. Several contributing factors to the rise of nationalist feeling in many areas of Europe were spurred by the Enlightenment. Remember, we talked about that, the scientific revolution, the scientific method, the new ways of thinking. So American and French revolution, because after the French Revolution, we have American Revolution also, which was a little before that, both created a united country of kind of democratic principles, meaning we give up a little bit of our rights for a government to govern us, but it's a give and take. We also have the Industrial Revolution, which we talked about a module or two ago, which created complex economies, class divisions. We had a conservative reaction to some of these revolutions in an effort to unite for one country. And then we have revolutionary actions of 1848, which went all across Europe. You have a picture of the famous one, the storming of Bastille on July 14th of 1789 during the French Revolution. So we have a lot of things that are spurring these feelings. Again, feel free to pause if you didn't get everything. Great Britain, so their start, so we're going to look at the countries. They had already had a philosophy of liberalism or democracy. They had a limited monarchy already. However, the right to vote or franchisement was not allowed to all people. So this is something that they really were lobbying for. And in 1832, a reform bill was introduced by the Whig Party that basically redistributes the parliament or the apportionment. Apportionment means how many people or how many or numbers, to put a greater importance on the urban areas, extending this right to vote. Eventually, we get an expansion of suffrage called the Chartist movement. So Great Britain is one of our first countries, and one of the first things they go about is suffrage or the right to vote. All right, moving my face again. Let's talk about the unification of Italy. Italy has not been united since the times of the Romans. So in this nationalism sense, it's all about coming together, pooling your resources. You have Giuseppe Manzi. Please highlight and star. I think he's on the quiz. He's for the Young Italy movement, and he was part of the revolts of 1848. King Victor Emmanuel and Camilla Cavour, also highlight and star, of Sardinia, take on the task of trying to unite northern Italy. Again, this feeling of nationalism, unification. With unification becomes power, which breeds power and strength. Giuseppe Garibaldi, also on the quiz, highlight, he was a military leader, controlled southern Italy, and started an organization called the Red Shirts. Garibaldi and Victor Emmanuel unite and liberate lands to form a more united Italy, north and south. Rome and Venice come under control. Ooh. So nationalism, again, sparks unity, and we get the unification of Italy under the people that have been listed. So make sure you know that. German unity. The failure of the German nation states to unite was kind of disappointing. But northern German states have a developing sense of separation from Austria. They're kind of feeling a pull or a difference from them. So Prussia becomes a dominant German state. Go ahead and highlight that. And whenever after I say highlight, you can stop and highlight and then push play again. King William I becomes Prussia's king in 1861, and he calls on Otto von Bismarck, highlight, to head the government and try to stir a lot of this German unity. There's a defying of Parliament by declaring the king, and he would rule without question, which is kind of different from what some of the other unification processes are doing. So it's a little bit of controversy when he comes in, Mr. von Bismarck. Otto von Bismarck, he rules through blood and iron. Please highlight. And again, you're going to do it whether you like it or not. And it's very important. Let me see what this says here. This is Bismarck's program to unify Germany, blood and iron. And he also uses this phrase called the realpolitik. And basically, he governs with the politics of reality, or sometimes the ends just justify the means. I'm going to do what I need to do. People may die. There may be some consequences, but the ends justify the means, and this is what's best for Germany. And we do get the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. It's the realpolitik. The ends justify the means. We're going to unite. Then we get the rise of the Second Reich. Please highlight and star, or the Franco-Prussian War of 1871. Prussia defeats France in a patriotic war, and war begins to push southern Germany states to kind of join with Prussia. So we're already seeing people picking their sides and going a different direction. War set some very harsh terms for France, and we lose the Alsace-Lorraine territory, which is a huge part of, or one of the major takeaways from the Franco-Prussian War. And the Second Reich is established, and William becomes the Kaiser. Make sure you know the definition of Kaiser, or ruler or emperor after this. Make sure you highlight and star or pause. Bismarck's Germany. So, with growing socialist and liberalist movement in German politics, we do get conservative rule, but with liberal policies. So, what does that mean? It's they conservative meaning economically, but very liberal or loose policies. We do get some absolutist control. We do get universal suffrage or voting, but for men, not women. Promoted national unity and pride under Otto von Bismarck. We get a German legislature. We get the Bundesrat, or the appointed officials, and the Reichstag, which is kind of like a parliament, or an idea that things could be run by the people. So it's this kind of quasi form of government under Otto von Bismarck. There's the German Empire. There's Prussia. The Rhineland. Let's look at his domestic policy. Industrialism begins, and protective tariffs or taxes are developed to stimulate the economy and to fight against socialism. So they outlawed the Social Democratic Party, and we bring in some new social reforms. You get social security laws, you get some of these welfare type programs. And finally, Bismarck resigns in 1890, and they get a new emperor, William II, who resented his power. And Germany will now be one of Europe's most strongest nations as a result of some of the steps that Otto von Bismarck took domestically, militarily, and economically. Let's look at Russia. Mid 19th century Russia was most backward of the major European nation. They were still mostly agriculture, hadn't industrialized yet. They still had these class systems, and serfdom still held the most peasants as slaves. They still had that open field two crop system, the largest territory, and they had the most diverse nationalities, but it was a lot of underdeveloped resources that were landlocked, many ethnic groups, and they had a strong absolute ruler. So unification of this was going to be a difficult task. So their efforts at reform or change was to defeat the Crimean War of the 1850s. Well, their defeat in the Crimean War of the 1850s really showed Russia's weakness and kind of left them vulnerable. So reform efforts begun immediately at the Tsarist level. Political opposition continues, government repression. So it's really difficult. It's back and forth. They wanted to end all these liberal protests and terrorisms. And as a result of that, you get all these growth of radical groups. So all the time, reform and unification isn't easy. You get Tsar Nicholas II. He's the last Tsar in 1894. The government industrialization begins. And by 1900, Russia had seemingly made great progress in trying to catch up with the rest of industrialized world and the global economy. But socialist groups continue to push for reforms. So we do get the Russo-Japanese War, which ends in 1905 with Russia being humiliated by Japan. The Revolution of 1905, they have their own Bloody Sunday in January of 1905. Pent up anger against the Tsar, the liberals, lack of progress strikes this up. The Tsarist troops kill hundreds of protesters. And the Revolution of 1905, there's a large peasant and worker revolt. Strikes begin to freeze the economy. The Tsar issues reform efforts in this huge October manifesto, but the parliament has little power, so it doesn't go far. And the Russian monarchy only survives because its enemies are not yet united in opposition. Russia is in shambles. People are still unhappy. So make sure you know and star about Bloody Sunday, which is again a protest and uprise as a result of all of the anger against a slow system in the Tsar. Nationalist Austria-Hungary. Let's look at them. Austria-Hungary lost more land due to Italian and German nationalism. And in 1848, revolt led to their monarch's resignation. It's a monarchy and it survives with a new ruler. But the emperor resigns, an 18-year-old nephew becomes emperor. And the old European empire that brought together Hungarians, Germans, Slavs, Poles, and Serbs. Again, the one thing you need to know on this slide is just the last point is with the nationalist Austria-Hungary Empire. Is how they unite. Dual monarchy. Austrian defeat by Prussia in 1866. Let's see if I can move. The empire begins to split Austria-Hungary up, and it becomes a dual monarchy shared between the finance minister, defense, and foreign affairs. Other national groups begin to push for independence, and nationalism serves to try to break up this empire. So that's where you have the Austria-Hungary and a dual monarchy. And you have our works cited. There you go.